Welcome everyone to our virtual BioBlitz at Kelley Park. I hope that you're having a great day today, and we are really excited to show you Kelley Park, which is a large urban park located in the heart of San Jose. In fact, it is like having 6 parks in one large open space. Happy Hollow Park and Zoo, Japanese Friendship Garden, History San Jose, there's a general park use area, the Leninger Center, and the Viet Heritage Garden and Disc Golf Course. My name is Deb Kramer, and I'm with Keep Coyote Creek Beautiful. I'm here today to take you through a tour of Kelley Park while we take a deep dive in nature and walk to highlight all of its beauty. We'll be showcasing each presenter to learn about what they find. First, let me talk about our partnership. We're partnering with Grassroots Ecology. And again, my name is Deb Kramer. I'm the executive director with Keep Coyote Creek Beautiful. And one of the videographers that we have with us is Coulter Cook. Our team, Keep Coyote Creek Beautiful, is a community-based organization focused on creating a vibrant Coyote Creek. We hope that you'll participate in some of the events that we host, including creek cleanups, advocacy. We also have bike rides, BioBlitzes, and other events. I'm going to introduce Hannah, who is from our partner, Grassroots Ecology.
Hi, everyone. I'm Hannah Cunningham. I'm the Education Programs Coordinator with Grassroots Ecology. You'll meet my colleague, Kathleen, who's our Education Director, later. About our organization, Grassroots Ecology's mission is to engage and educate the public to restore local ecosystems. So we work and leverage the power of volunteers and within our communities to create healthy lands across Silicon Valley. We work on the peninsula and South Bay at a number of open spaces and preserves. We restore native plants to those spaces and also native neighborhoods. And we steward creeks and watersheds, and we also provide nature education. We're really happy to join Keep Coyote Creek Beautiful today to share and explore everything that this awesome open space Kelley Park has to offer.
So we have a little Zoom housekeeping that Hannah is going to share with us.
Yes, so a couple quick things. One thing is, for the best experience, we're going to ask you to mute your audio and turn off your video. That will allow us to focus in on our naturalists in the field. You should set your video layout to speaker mode and full screen so you can see everything that they find. And definitely put your questions in the chat, and we'll be monitoring them and bring them to the naturalists for Q&A.
Thanks. So at this time, I'd like to acknowledge our sponsors who made this possible. First of all, we received a grant from the Open Space Authority of Santa Clara Valley, and we're really grateful to be able to do this for the next year. Also, the San Jose Parks and Recreation Neighborhood Services Organization were able to provide us with the opportunity to use this space in this park. Just to give you a sense of the watershed itself, Coyote Creek is a 64-mile long creek. It starts up at Henry Coe State Park, runs in a backwards J through Anderson Lake, Coyote Valley, and enters downtown San Jose, flows through Milpitas and out to San Francisco Bay. The yellow circle that you see, that is where our team is located at Kelley Park. Let me introduce at this time Merav Vonshak. She's one of our naturalists who's a community science organizer. She leads public events and programs in the South Bay. She organizes BioBlitz events and leads hikes and iNaturalist workshops in collaboration with many organizations. She's leading community science programs such as Pacific Newt's roadkill surveys and the Jasper Ridge Ant Survey. She also teaches natural history at San Jose State and contributes to various citizen science projects. Merav founded BioBlitz.club, a home for community science events in the South Bay, where people can learn about future activities and download free material. She has a BA in biology, an MS in science in ecology, and a PhD in zoology. Our second naturalist is Kathleen Tarlow. She grew up in the Bay Area and still can't get enough of the beautiful outdoor spaces and all that they contain. She has degrees in biology and education and finds it easiest to talk about plants since they don't move. She currently shares her love of local nature with people of all ages as the education director at Grassroots Ecology. So let's take a look at Coulter and Merav and see where they're at and if they've got some interesting things for us to see.
Yeah, so Coulter and I stopped here by this beautiful Coastline Oak that I'm standing underneath because this is probably our most common native oak in the Bay Area, and it's awesome because it supports so many of our native insects, and in turn they serve as food for birds and lizards and lots of other animals. So these are really important trees in our landscape, and I'll show you why. So in just the past 5 minutes when we're standing here, we noticed so many different insects on this specific tree. And let me show you. So the first one, yeah, it's still here. Awesome. So yeah, so this is the skipper. I think this is a fire skipper. I'm not sure. It's one of these little skippers. One on the slide is a woodland skipper. This I'm not even sure about ID. But what I want to show you some other things. So again, this is a Coastline Oak, and we'll just kind of slowly move and look at the different things. This is another one. This is called Stigmella. It's a leaf mining moth. So you'll see that there are lots of different moth caterpillars. Okay, so this is called a leaf miner because the caterpillar actually lives between the two layers of the leaf. So it's so tiny and I guess flat that it could live between the two layers of the leaf. Okay, and that's right here. So this is a tussock moth, super common caterpillar on our oak. Their preferred host plant is the Coastline Oak, but they can actually feed on lots of other things. It's kind of colorful and pretty, very hairy. So in general, if you see a hairy caterpillar, you don't want to hold it because it might cause some allergic. Leave it right there. Okay, there are a few others I want to show you. So I kind of like oaks because they have plenty of galls. So this little structure here, this is called a gall. Okay, this is a structure induced by an insect, in this case, or a wasp, that makes the plant grow a little structure for it. And let me show you another one, and then I'll explain.
So maybe while you're working on that, we could switch over to Kathleen.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm standing out in a small patch of field by the parking lot. There's an amazing diversity of different things out here. And I've been standing, first I saw a mole, but I finally scared it away, unfortunately. But there are some ground squirrels here. And now there's also some humans playing Frisbee. So the one ground squirrel I've been looking at is under a tree. So Deb, it might work better now to show the stills of the California ground squirrels, and I can talk a little bit more about California ground squirrels, which are one of my absolute favorite native animals that I don't really think get enough appreciation in our landscape. So they live to a burrow of burrows, and they are social. So here's kind of, I think, a backdoor to one of the ground squirrel burrows. And the ground squirrels actually have like a social calling system And if a lot of people, I've actually seen people walk by ground squirrel burrows, and the squirrels make the strangest warning call. It's sort of like a chittering noise, but it also kind of sounds like your fire alarm when it's running out of batteries. It's like a really high pitched beeping noise that also echoes. And so you'll see one standing up on top of their hill, making this chittering noise. And I think it's sort of like a call to let the others know someone is afoot. But they are pretty bold. These are not the squirrels you see climbing like maybe the trees around your house. Those would be tree squirrels. So ground squirrels live in these burrows underground. Their burrows also become home to other really interesting creatures like burrowing owls. And they sort of open up the soil a little bit. I have seen them try to climb, and they seem to not know their own weight, because sometimes they'll climb up the stalk of something and then just knock the entire stalk down. So they definitely do better on the ground. Let me see if I can get there is one in the shade of this tree. They have a white lining to their eye. Oh, there he goes. He just disappeared. I can see his tail now. So I'm going to keep walking, and I'm going to show something different because I do really like plants, but I couldn't resist the ground squirrel. And I'm going to go ahead and show a buckeye tree, which puts on a really, really beautiful display in spring. So this right here is a California buckeye tree, and its leaves are kind of hugged inwards right now, but it's got these palmate leaves. They spread outward like your palm. And this tree really has to hustle in spring. It's really well adapted to the dry California summers. So in the summer, it will drop all of these beautiful green leaves. And in the spring, it actually starts in the winter. It leafs out. The first thing it does is leaf out with these beautiful leaves. Then we're about to witness the beautiful white sprays of flowers that it will open up in the next week or two. Now this one is just sending its opening one flower that's going off like a firework at the top. But this whole set of buds will open up and make this beautiful white cluster of flowers. Native bees love it. And interestingly, European honeybees, which are non-native, can't take the pollen. The pollen is poisonous. And this tree makes something called a buckeye. That's why it's called a California buckeye. It looks like a big nut in the fall. And that too is poisonous to a lot of animals. They sort of end up on the tree looking like Christmas ornaments in late fall. They are not something that humans can eat unless they are specially prepared and some of the toxins are leached out. I have noticed when I've sprouted these on my balcony that the squirrels seem to be able to eat the buckeyes, at least at some point, maybe after they've sprouted. So one of the things I've always been curious about is whether those buckeyes get maybe less toxic after they've been off the tree, or whether California native squirrels are able to tolerate them. I'm not sure, but it's a very cool tree. And I'm gonna walk over to another tree next, but if we want to cut back to Merav, we can. Otherwise, I can walk with my camera.
Yeah, I think we'd be happy to share things again. And I can show you this highway of ants. So these are called winter ants or small honey ants. These are native ants that are pretty common in the Bay Area, but they're also distributed all through the US, which is pretty interesting. They have this really wide distribution range. They're really cool ants. Yeah, ants. So they're pretty cool. They nest in the ground, but they like foraging on trees, and especially on coastline oaks. Many ants would forage on coastline oaks because probably they have good food for them. Some way they get the plants up, and they also feed on different aphids and other things. They tend aphids. We might see that later. Yeah, but I guess enough about the ants. Let's show you some galls because we were about to do that when we decided to switch. So this is the fall generation of the first gall I was trying to show you. So this structure has been here since the fall. You can see the holes. These are the exit holes of a little wasp. So the wasp would lay its egg on the stem in this case, and the larva hatching from the eggs would start chewing on the plant tissue, and then the plant in response will grow this tumor, basically, this organ that is not supposed to be here, because this is an oak. It's only supposed to have leaves, acorns, and twigs, and that's it. Everything else you see, these are all sorts of different galls. So most of them on oaks are induced by wasps, and each one is a different species. So this specific species would make this specific structure, and they make a different structure in the spring. And then there's a different one that makes this one. Okay, you see it's pretty different. This one is kind of part of the stem, and the other one was kind of sitting on the stem. And again, you can see the exit holes because these both are pretty old galls. Okay, so that was one more thing. What else? We had a few things on this tree. We had an ant. We had, should I show you again the butterfly, the skipper? Because I'm not sure you got to see it, right? So let's quickly do that. And the other caterpillar. Oh, yeah, cool. Yeah, and the skipper is cooperating so nicely. So this is our skipper, which is a kind of butterfly. I think this is the fiery skipper. So look, it's so well behaved. So butterflies usually would take off or actually never land. But it's kind of cold this morning. So I think this is helpful for us. And then I want to show you a caterpillar. So this was obviously the adult butterfly. This is a caterpillar of a common moth, Coyote. You might have seen these before. You're kind of fast. I think they're quite awesome. It's way better camouflaged than the other one. It's completely green. It looks just like the leaves. And I only noticed it because I was so close to it. But this is pretty cool. And now we'll do something that I really like doing. We'll take the tree a little bit. So let's switch to Coulter's video. Because I want to show you what else we might find on the oak. Yeah, so I got this really cool spider. If you could switch back to my camera. We could try and show it on Coulter's camera. But it's pretty cool. So it's a male spider. I'm not sure which kind, but I know it's a male because it has the boxing gloves. It has these two large pedipalps in the front. A female has something that looks more like little legs in the front, and the male has something that looks like little boxing gloves, like a larger structure. Anyway, I think Kathleen was ready to show us something else. So we could do this again later.
Oh yeah, I'm ready whenever. I'm fine going back and forth. I'm just in front of a beautiful black walnut tree. Again, you can see the parking lot behind, but I always feel that, you know, California is a tough place to be a plant because the long, hot months of summer are when there's the most sun, but the least moisture. So every time we're in the spring months here, when there's been some moisture for the plants, I feel like a desperation to come out and witness everything that the plants and animals are doing to prepare for the really dry season ahead. So let me flip this. I'm at a black walnut tree. And again, I think people have pretty strongly held notions about sort of what spring should look like or what flowers should look like. And here, so first of all, you can just see all the new growth here coming out of the end of the stem on the walnut tree. The leaves are really just exploding. out of the stem in their frantic growth pace before it gets completely dry. But then these beautiful green sort of pendants hanging down are the flowers of this tree, and these will be what eventually will make it possible for this tree to produce the nuts that people, at least at one time, would have harvested from this tree. So I sort of like to, I think in California, we absolutely have seasons. You just have to sort of like be open to looking at what's actually there. And like so many native trees, this tree is providing all kinds of interesting habitat for other things. So there's, just like everywhere else I've been standing, there are some very deep ground squirrel burrows here. This is a really sort of, that one is well developed. I'd say that's a front door. And then in the trunk of the tree, there are some clearly old acorn holes from an acorn woodpecker. So it's possible that this tree was used as a granary one season. It's pretty banged up now, so I'm thinking this is definitely not an active granary tree, but it's definitely been used that way in the past.
Okay, so here we are next to Coyote Creek, and the creek is right here behind all these trees. We have a whole kind of different native trees here, and we'll kind of walk down to look at the creek a little bit. You will see what it looks like, and then you'll realize why we are not going to spend too much time there. And just watch out from the person. So yeah, so this is Coyote Creek. We visit different sections of the creek for our different events. This one looks really grim. I mean, you could see a shopping cart, a mattress, I don't know, whole bunch of trash in the creek and outside the creek. So it looks like people live right here, and there's just so much trash. Yeah, both inside the creek and wherever we are. And you can see the creek water doesn't look clean, and obviously it's not. Usually when we do our events, we will actually dip our nets inside the water, and we will look for different creatures inside. We look for different macroinvertebrates. These are different insect larvae and crustaceans and different kind of invertebrates, also snails and clams. And by looking at them, we could learn about the quality of the water, okay? So depending on what we find there, we could tell how, clean the water is. If we go to Coyote Valley, for example, we go to Coyote Creek there, the water is pretty clean. We might find caddisfly larvae, we might find damselfly and dragonfly larvae. You've probably seen the adults flying by the water sometimes. So all these different insects, they have aquatic larvae living in the water, and flying adults that leave the water. And all these different insects are really important as fish food, okay? So fish rely on all this biomass. In a healthy creek, you could have so many of these mayflies and damselflies and dragonflies and all these other things. So they're really important. And then when we go to a place like this, I'm not going to go down, but we might find some non-native clams and snails. We might find some flatworms, some creatures that can tolerate pollution, okay? The other species just can't tolerate this level of pollution. And by looking at the different organisms, we could learn more about the creek health. Deb, did you want to say something about creek cleanups and stuff like that?
Yes, thank you, Merav. So one of the things that our organization does and was formed for was to be able to care for and restore Coyote Creek. So in order to do that, we bring together community members from high school kids to families to do creek cleanups and corporations. But we also work on other activities to get people to get out and enjoy the creek, like bike rides and nature walks, as well as the BioBlitzes, similar to what you're experiencing now. On the trash side, we do host cleanups. Right now, we're doing them every week because of the Earth Day. And we're still collecting between 1 and 3 tons of trash every time. And most people think it's just from the homeless people, but it's not. A lot of it starts with illegal dumping. So if folks can start by having their trash taken care of through the regular free dumping that is available through their community and trash service, then that would reduce the amount of trash that goes into our creek. However, it is significantly polluted because of homeless people who are living right along the creek. You can't advocate for its health. We do participate in Coyote Valley project, where we try to encourage people to learn about and value the open spaces. And also you can write letters to your representatives. So hopefully with Keep Coyote Creek Beautiful and your interest in nature, you can participate. Do we switch over to Kathleen now?
Kathleen, before you show us that really cool plant, do you mind, since we've explored a little bit, giving us a short overview of the park in general? Like, how are some of these trees there?
Yeah.
A bit more about the space.
Yeah, you bet. So, well, Native Americans have lived in this area for thousands and thousands of years. And then once the land began to be divided up into ranches, a couple hundred years ago, the land sort of went through a big transformation that we can actually learn about by looking at the plants that are here. But when the property and the Kelley house, which I don't think we'll see today, but you can see it if you visit this park, the person Lawrence Archer Kelley or some Lawrence Kelley. Anyway, the man who first owned it was a former mayor of San Jose. And he was also he was a judge for Santa Clara County and a California state legislator. And he bought this big piece of land and used it as an orchard, mostly for nuts and cherries. And it was passed to his daughter when he passed away. And she continued to build up the gardens that are more like the Japanese friendship garden, more of the cultivated gardens instead of the orchard. And then the land was purchased for the city and then eventually sold to the city by a group of people including Emily Renzel, who's actually behind a lot of open spaces in this area. So now it is owned by the city of San Jose. And it's really interesting to study the plants that are here and sort of think about how they reveal some of the natural history and what the past holds and what the future holds. So we're in a really cool area to see that, because this is definitely, it looks like kind of like a big bush, but it's definitely an old orchard tree that you can see a stump in the middle. I almost think it's a stump resprout, but this is going to be an orchard. Oh, there's a bumblebee. Hold on, let me see if I can get the beautiful, someone can call out. I'm going to just say yellow face because it looks like it is a yellow face, but there's a beautiful bumblebee making use of these flowers. So this is something in the rose family. I think this is maybe an old cherry tree because of the small blossoms. But we just saw how a native pollinator is making use of these blossoms that were planted here probably over 100 years ago for sure. And this plant's kind of coming back without really having been pruned or cared for. It's sort of doing its own thing. And what's cool is there's a lot of interesting stuff growing within this plant. There's actually definitely a ground squirrel burrow in the middle. And then there's a beautiful vine climbing along the flower, I'm going to say the cherry stems. And this is called California manroot or wild cucumber. It is related to the cucumbers that we eat, but no part of this plant is good to eat. It's actually part of its name. Its genus name is Mara, which means bitter. So this particular plant is not good to eat. But it makes these super cool, beautiful flowers that have already come and gone. But the flowers, which there are male and female flowers, and the female flowers, once pollinated, give rise to some super cool looking spiny fruits. I think Deb might have a picture of that. Yeah, that's the female flower, and you can see a little ball behind that female flower. And then once the female flower is pollinated, you get there, and we can probably see some of those in the park. If you spot wild cucumber vines around right now, if you kind of peek beneath the leaves, you'll see some of those spiny fruits, and they're really, really cool. And then another sort of volunteer here is a Coastline Oak sapling. And again, in the theme of spring, you've got some really tough green leaves down here, which I think are the older leaves. But then you see these new tender greenish leaves on the Coastline Oak as it puts forward that growth before the heat of the summer, when these leaves will really have to toughen up and kind of sclerify to withstand the dry conditions. Yeah, I think I'll pass it back to Merav if she's ready.
Yes, we are. We are ready. We actually stayed in the same location because we still have other things we want to show you. So we have two plants here. One is kind of cute and fluffy. It's the box elder, and it has this really cool wind pollinated flowers right here. And then the other one is poison oak. So we stayed here because, you know, if you learn one plant today, it should be poison oak. So poison oak is highly allergenic. We won't touch the leaves, not even with the fluffy microphone. And you can see an ant. This is the winter ant we saw before. It's foraging on the poison oak. And these are the flowers. Poison oak have very small berries that I think birds actually really like. But anyway, try and avoid touching poison oak. If you go hiking, it's always best to just wash everything when you're back, because you don't want to touch it. You don't want to have it on your clothes. And then one more plant I want to show here is this willow. This whole big thing is a willow. It's one of our native willows, I think. And they also support lots of insects. But we had one more cool thing to show you. So we have a weed here called cheeseweed or mallow. And one of them, oh, this one had, so they have all sorts of insects on them, because often they'll have some aphids, and the aphids attract aphid predators like this lady beetle larva. They look like little alligators, I think. Maybe busy thinking about something, but yeah, they official insects. Yeah, and there are a few different species of lady beetles that live here in the park. The other thing I wanted to show you here is this rust fungus. Okay, this is pretty common. So again, the plant is non-native, but maybe it's been here for long enough that it already has so many different insects that would use it, and a fungus like this rust that makes these galls on the underside. So pretty cool, I think. So you've probably seen this plant many, many times. I wonder if you noticed that it has so much stuff going on it. And there are probably lots of other insects that we just didn't notice yet. But it could be leaf hoppers. They could be plant bugs. Oh, here's a leaf hopper right there. So it's not the large piece, it's the little one right here. Oop, did you see it hop? So that's what they do. It's a leaf hopper. Oh, and we wanted to show the cucumber. So this thing is a cucumber, and we had a huge fruit, just like the one that Kathleen was talking about. We had a big seed. Oh, right here. Look at that. Isn't it cool? So this is the California cucumber fruit seed. I mean, the seeds are pretty large. They're inside, right next to this poison oak. Okay, here's another one. Yeah, very cool plant. And this is the time to see them because they'll be gone soon. Okay, so yeah, let's move out of this poison oak infested place, and we could move back to Kathleen.
Okay. So I'm in a big open field in the disc golf course. And this is another great spot to reflect on sort of the historical ecology of this park, and also just take a really good look at what we are seeing here if we look closely. So I'm going to switch this. So if you look out, we're in kind of, I guess what you could call a patch of grassland. And if you just look at the color is, I think, it's still green, but we're getting closer to that golden California hillside color. And it's gonna look, here's a piece of grass. This is what the grass is going to look like. These are all annual grasses, and they're all non-native, and they're the legacy of cattle grazing in California, which, you know, has been going on here for a couple hundred years, which is really not that long in a historical sense, but in the way that it's transformed sort of the grasslands from what used to be perennial grasses to annual grasses, it's been a really incredible transformation. And so I'm in a good spot to show you some of those grasses, and they're kind of interesting right now. So one of them is called wild oats. There's 2 species, and the genus is named Avena. But again, thinking about spring, these are annual plants. They need to set their growth. They need to get their reproducing done. So let me see if I can cradle this in my hand a little bit. This is actually a wild oat in flower. If you can see, there's these little dangling yellow things from some of these seed heads. And let me try to find one here we go. So again, just like flowers, you know, flowers don't always look like a picture of a daisy that I think is in everybody's mind. But this Avena is flowering right now. It's having its, you know, burst, its annual burst. It's going to drop its seeds and leave those seeds to come up for next year. Each individual plant will die. Another non-native, oh, there we go. We got a good picture. And you can see on the picture that Deb is showing now that there's a bunch of leaf hoppers on that Avena. There's a ton of those out here right now that I can also try to find, but that's going to be a better picture. So these grasses have been here for hundreds of years, and there's certainly animals, insects that have found the way to use them. And the ground squirrels I saw earlier were just munching these plants, putting on plenty of heft. Here's another one. This is foxtail barley. If you have a dog, you will know that when these dry out, these awns, these sort of hairy, bristly parts of the grass, which are going to be the seed, those are the ones that will get stuck in your dog's paw. If you're out in the grassland in the summer, it's not very pleasant for dogs, and they'll get in your socks. Here's a foxtail barley with a very cute little leaf hopper on it. I'll see if you can see. Let's see if, oh, there it goes. So yeah, these are all non-native grasses. And when we think of like the golden hillsides of California, we're actually looking at the legacy of grazing, and the annual grasses that come up. They actually draw a lot of water out of the soil in their annual flowering, and then they go to seed for the following year. And it's really changed the nature of our grasslands, and they do very well in these disturbed areas. So, all right, I'm going to pass it back to Merav.
Okay. Okay, so should we start with the scrub jay, or should we start with the caddibrush? Caddibrush, okay, because we want to talk about scrub jays as well, because we've been hearing them all the time here. Okay, so now we're standing in front of caddibrush, which is another really important native plant. It's also very common. It's often the first plant you get, I mean, other than grasses, like the first bush you'll get growing in a highly disturbed area like this area. But it's actually a great plant because it also supports lots of our native insects, and they will attract lots of different birds and live under the bush. So it's a pretty great plant, and we already spotted quite a few things on it. So let me show you. We could maybe focus with our lens here. So yeah, if you could go to my camera. Awesome. Okay, so this thing it's a pretty old, it's not in great shape, but it's a kind of an old gall. So this one is made by a midge, which is a type of fly. So this is a midge gall on Caddibrush. And Caddibrush has different kind of galls on it. So this is one. There's, of course, when you need them, they're all hiding. All these things have great camouflage. They just look like the regular part of the plant, but we saw a few of them when we were here half an hour ago. So let's see, where was it? We had like 3 of them right here. Okay. Maybe they escaped. Not that galls can escape, but maybe they did. Okay, Coulter will find one, and while he's looking, I'll show you another thing that Coulter found. So this is a really cool structure, a different kind of structure made by a different kind of moth. So this moth, I think it's either the cocoon or it's just like a little shelter for the caterpillar, but this is a specific one. Okay, Coulter has a gall for us, so we'll see it in a second. And there was, another structure I want to show you. So this is called a bagworm. So this is a different kind of moth that creates a little shelter. And it's actually pretty common on Caddibrush. It's just, you see, it doesn't look like much. So it's very easy to ignore. But when you start looking at these things, you notice more. So yeah, that's a really nice one. So this is a gall made by a moth, okay? And oops, come on. So this gall, the first gall we saw on Caddibrush was made by a midge, and this one is made by a moth, and it's a stem gall, okay? And let's see if we have something else to show you here before we start shaking this plant a little bit to see what else you can find. I wonder if you can hear the background noise. I mean, not the helicopter, but there's all sorts of like beeps in the background. These are actually not birds. These are the California ground squirrels. And they're sitting here on top of a little hill and calling. I don't know what they're saying, but they are saying something. So now how about we switch to Coulter's camera for a second. So I'll shake this plant a little bit. Nothing exciting. Okay, nothing too exciting, but there are some really tiny things. Can you see all these tiny things moving? This one is a mite. So mites are closely related to ticks. There are arachnids and and we also have different kind of leaf hoppers. Okay, all these little green moving things and psyllids. So all sorts of little herbivores. These guys, they all feed on plant sap, so they hide on the plants. And then there are probably some predator insects as well that we are not seeing now. Often you'll find different spiders and different things. So you can see these are adult insects. They have wings. I wonder if you could see the details well enough. Okay. Yeah, cool. Okay, and we could see if we could find one more thing. Otherwise, Kathleen, if you want to share something else, you could do that.
I'd bring up the little chirpy ground squirrel that Merav and Coulter had been hearing in the background. So this is another example of what the little guy looks like.
And I just quickly want to show you one thing, sorry. Just when I wanted to say goodbye, I wanted to show you something. So I found this cool caterpillar. If you could switch to my video. I found this really cool caterpillar. It's from the Caddibrush. You can see it looks exactly like, well, maybe let's move to Coulter's video. So it looks just like a twig, but this is actually a caterpillar of some moth. probably an inchworm. Okay, you could see the head is right here with tiny, tiny legs. And then these are the false legs in the back. But very cool. And even now that we found it and it's on my tray, it's still thinking that it's like, oh, I look like a twig. Nobody could see me. Nobody would notice me. But it's very much alive. It's just not moving. Because most of the predators would eat something when it moves, and they would ignore it if it's not moving. So I don't know if it's working or not. I think I'm not going to eat it. So maybe it is working.
I might eat it.
Yeah, possibly. Okay, so yeah, if you want to go back to Kathleen. Thank you.
Okay, so at Grassroots Ecology, we're pretty pro native plants, but I'm about to flip to one of my favorite non-native plants that really likes disturbed areas. This is called Oyster Plant or Salsify. And this is a cool one because it's like half bud still, and it's flowering out. And I got another one here that's fully out. It's in the sunflower family or the aster family. And you can see sort of the beautiful detail in the middle of the flower. And this is called Oyster Plant because supposedly you can dig up the roots. It has a pretty sizable root. And it's supposed to taste like oysters, although I feel like Claire, who's on this call and could maybe answer questions. Oh, there we go. I think Claire says she thinks it tastes kind of just like mushrooms. But there's a lot of sort of foraging information about this particular flower. And the ones that I found are actually, there's a ton of aphids all over it. Whatever's in this salsify plant is really, really delicious to the small creatures because it is just covered in aphids. There's all these pockets of these black aphids that must be just sucking lots of juice out of the plant. So I don't know if you can see too much, but it really is just coated in aphids. So anyway, it's really beautiful. It likes to grow along the road. It likes disturbed spots. It's growing here just in the midst of some of those other European grasses. So yeah, I'll hand it back to Merav.
One more thing we wanted to talk about was the scrub jay. So maybe Deb, if you could show a slide of the scrub jay. Coulter wanted to talk about it a little bit.
Yeah, so here in the park, we've been hearing lots of scrub jays. Coulter here, by the way. And I haven't necessarily seen them, but one thing that I like to point out whenever I'm doing a BioBlitz, one of the most common things I hear is like, ooh, there's a blue jay. And they're not blue jays. They're certainly related to blue jays. We don't have blue jays here on the western coast. We have scrub jays, which look most similar to a blue jay, but not quite as patterned or beautiful looking. We also have Steller's jays. I don't know if there's a photo of that somewhere, but Steller's jays, they are also a blue medium-sized bird. But the main difference is that they have a black head and a giant mohawk. One thing that I was really fascinated to learn about jays, both Stellers and the scrub jay, is that they are both related to corvids, so things like ravens and crows. So that was very interesting. And on that sort of similar note, they can mimic other birds. Sometimes you can hear the Steller's jay actually making an imitation noise of a red-tailed hawk, which is a predator. So if something's bothering the Steller's jay, it can just make that noise and then, things go away, which is pretty handy.
Awesome, thank you.
Okay, so we are actually down to our last couple of minutes. And one of the questions was about galls. Are they harmful to the tree?
So yeah, that's a great question. I think we didn't talk about it much, but usually they are not harmful to the tree. but I mean, they could be. I think only if the tree is not doing well. Sometimes you see an oak that is not doing very well, and then it could have hundreds, if not thousands, of galls on it. So it might be a problem to support all that mass. But otherwise, on healthy trees, they usually don't bother that much by the galls, even though they could have so many of them.
Kathleen, is there anything you'd like to share in closing?
I was just gonna show this palm tree growing. I'm actually pretty close to the creek right now. And I guess my final thought is that it's kind of funny that I think people think of palm trees as kind of an iconic California tree, but actually the only native palms are California fan palms, and they're kind of found down in the oases of our the California desert regions. Yeah, that's another one that's growing here. So this actually is a fan palm. It's probably not a California fan palm. The Mexican fan palms are pretty common, but these palm trees can actually be pretty invasive, and they can especially be pretty invasive in our creek areas. So it's just something to think about. It's a choice that we make sort of living here in California, that I think there's a lot of thought about palms being an iconic California tree, but there's lots of trees that I think it's worth spreading the word are better choices for an iconic California tree. So Merav did a lot of good talking about oak trees, so I think we'll leave it there. So
Great.
That's all I got. Yeah.
All right. Well, let me just close out here. Thank you so much, everyone, for participating. We had our presenters, Kathleen Tarlow from Grassroots Ecology and Merav Vonshak from BioBlitz.club. And Coulter Cook was out in the field from Coyote Creek Beautiful, videoing Merav, and Hannah and I were in the background helping to move things along. If you want to learn a little bit more about our organizations or our sponsors, you can see that we had the Open Space Authority and the City of San Jose who provided us with some support. Our next BioBlitz is going to be on virtual BioBlitz on April 30th, and you're welcome to join us for that. It'll be at Osier Ponds, which is kind of towards the central Coyote Valley. And we also have on May 1st another BioBlitz in person at Kelley Park. And finally, as while we're talking about Kelley Park, tomorrow, Wednesday, we'll be having a virtual tour with a ranger and with another volunteer who manages bird boxes, especially for the western bluebirds. So we hope you'll join us for those. Thanks, everyone.